Yeah, it's amazing. I could I want to be like the play-by-play announcer for this fair.
Yeah.
It does make me want to try something.
We got to go to a fair because we're all foodies.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, all right. So my talk table maybe is a way that you can work off some of the food. It's the return of slam ball. Okay, so if you're not familiar, it's mostly like basketball, but it incorporates parts of football, gymnastics, and hockey. The goal is to score baskets while jumping on trampolines, and while the players are trying to block you and sometimes even tackle you. Wow. And that's where football and hockey come into play because contact is allowed. Two teams compete for 4-on-4, playing 4 5-minute quarters. Slam ball came back with the Series 6 season this summer for the first time in more than a decade. The championship games are being played tonight. I love this sport because I love trampolines, I love basketball, and it incorporates all of the other sports that I like. And the game tonight will have Marshawn Lynch in the booth. So it will be explosive on the court and also in the booth.
I think that looks fun.
It's fun.
I do.
You know, I love trampolines.
Can you watch it?
And basketball, yeah. I remember when it came out a long time ago, and then it just left and disappeared. So I'm glad that they brought slam ball back.
I always loved trampolines as a kid.
Yeah.
My talk of the table is an elementary school teacher. He's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He's found a way, a fun way, we should say, to teach his students math, grammar, and science. Sean Connolly, they know him as Mr. C at school. He is known because he makes these great sing-alongs to popular songs and posts on the videos on TikTok. So he's got millions of followers, including Taylor Swift, who liked the video we're about to show you.
In school, before the skills gap is locked in. And if we have students that are graduating who cannot read or do math at grade level or have year 2035 competencies, they're going to be relegated to the low skills part of our workforce. And so we need to do something about that now. We need to be bold. We've got to let go of sacred cows and do things differently. And I hope that you will continue to report on the bold things we're doing to try to help all of our kids be prepared for a different world and workplace once they graduate. I'll take questions.
Here with ABC 13, Jacob Ranscon. Superintendent, what did surprise you about the test scores, if anything?
We've been tracking this. Again, we looked at the what-if data. We knew that this was the trend that we were going to see. So there weren't many surprises in this in these data. Next question.
They're slowly coming in, Superintendent Miles. We're going to go to our next question. If we have a question coming in, go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see any raised hands. Oh, there we go. Asher, go ahead.
Yep, sure. Thanks so much, and thanks for having the media availability. So Superintendent Miles, a week or two ago, I think this was the agenda review for the last board meeting, you said that if the STAAR scores were the same as last year, or last year's STAAR scores using the new accountability metrics, HISD would earn a C rating. Does this seal the deal?
Well, let's wait for the actual accountability metrics to come out, and that'll come out probably in a few weeks. I'm talking about the D through the A through F ratings, overall accountability. It does look like that. Again, we don't have the actual data accountability metrics from the state, so yes, we would probably be earning a C, but let's wait for that data to come out.
All right, we're going to go to Jason Miles and then Dominic after that. Jason, go ahead.
Hey there, Superintendent Miles, Jason Miles, KHOU 11 News. We did a back-to-school survey recently, and one parent asked, besides the STAAR test, what other instruments will the TEA use to measure growth, specifically in NES schools?
Yeah, a great question, especially right now. Look, the STAAR exam is one metric. It gives you a snapshot or a summary of how a school did, how a child did, how the district did um, when that test was taken. So it does provide some useful information with regard to a summary or an overall view of how well we're doing as a group. Uh, it's not very good with regard to progress monitoring. And so we have lots of other ways to assess how kids are doing as they are getting instruction. So things like the demonstration of learning that we're taking every day in every class, every core content class, those are short demonstrations of learning. You might want to, you could use the word quiz that shows if a kid is learning on a day-to-day, class-by-class basis. That's much better progress monitoring. We have DIBELS data. That's another nationally normed assessment. We have NWEA assessments that we'll be taking 3 times a year, also nationally normed. So many other ways to assess, and STAAR is just one more data point.
All right.
Howdy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanting to get your kind of overall take on the results. I was wondering in particular if you thought it was at all impressive that they held steady, given that it was the first year online. I know a lot of folks were expecting lower scores because of the move to online, and then the fact that it was still, in the eyes of some, recovery year from COVID. I was just wondering your overall take on the results. Did you find any of them impressive at all, given some of those disruptions?
Look, we didn't do well, and I do put that in context. We are now 2 years out of COVID, and we have to do better. And if you look at the results over many years, which I've done and talked about, we have low proficiency, and time is running out. Actually, it has run out. We have an inability to close the achievement gap and an inability to raise our proficiency. So the context I look at it is not just year to year or day to day. It's over time, and the challenges are real. The challenges are facing us now. And so there's still a sense of urgency. The results didn't change that. In fact, they kind of confirm that we should be urgent. They confirm that we should be bold. They confirm that the future is already here and our kids are not ready for that. So in that respect, no, nothing really surprised me. And it just confirmed the urgency that we need to work.
All right, we're going to go to Megan and then Josephine.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the achievement gap between, Black and Hispanic students and white and Asian students, as well as by socioeconomic status. I was curious if you could talk about your thoughts on those results for Houston ISD and also what you're hoping to do to narrow that gap.
Yeah, so thanks for asking the question. We still have an achievement gap that's pretty sizable. I gave you a couple of data points, but you could look at the results. And for EcoDis students, it's also about 35 points below our white students. That's too big a gap. And that's been the gap in HISD for quite some time. So again, it confirms that this is a challenge for us and we need to do something different. We can't keep doing the same things and hoping that the achievement gap is going to go away. So we're starting with the NES systems, whole-scale systemic reform. I've talked about that. I've talked about having good science of reading curriculum. And that's a change for a lot of schools, especially in the 85 NES or NESA schools. I've talked about high-quality instruction. I've talked about a different staffing model. It starts with the good old-fashioned making sure you don't have any vacancies, which we hope will have 0 vacancies. We're pretty close to that number right now. Last year, they had 644. That's a celebration. That's part of the work we have to do to work differently and to help our kids close that achievement gap, especially in the NES and NES schools. We have a different staffing model where we have teacher apprentices and learning coaches in those schools. We have a different systemic way of providing instruction. So those are the things we're going to do because this achievement gap is real, and the data just confirmed that.
Josephine, you're up next, and then we're going to go to Jason Miles.
Sure, thank you. So I have two questions. The first is, what percentage will the STAAR scores figure into teacher evaluations? And then basically, exactly how will they figure into the teacher evaluations? And then my second question is, you mentioned that there's only 26 vacancies now. So how many new hires have there been, and how many of those are certified teachers?
So the last time I reported, there were 87 teachers that we've hired who do not have a teacher certification. I don't have any newer numbers. I'll get those probably in the next couple of days. We're below 26 now, probably, because that's a number from a couple of days ago, as far as vacancies go. So we're doing really well with making sure that we have a teacher for every kid at the start of the school year. Then your first question was about, could you repeat that question, please?
Sure. How exactly will the STAAR score figure into teacher evaluation? Will they be evaluated based on the difference, like the change from one year to the other, and what percentage will they figure into that rubric?
So there are 100 points, right? And so the STAAR 10 points is the school-wide data. That's the only place that STAAR could possibly enter into a teacher's evaluation. So school-wide data is 10 points, 10 percentage points. And I say possibly because it's the school will get credit either for the STAAR accountability score, the overall score, or the school will get their 10 points based on the change in percentile growth of the students in the NWEA. So maximum 10 points, 10 percentage points is what the STAAR will count. So people who think we're just doing STAAR testing and want the STAAR scores to be high for teachers, that's not it. That's only 10 points out of their whole evaluation. The biggest section is the quality of instruction, which is 40 points out of a teacher's eval.
All right, we're going to go to Jason, and then we're going to go to Juan after Jason.
Superintendent Miles, circling back to our survey and NES specifically, one parent wanted to know, is there data that proves the NES system works? And additionally, a parent named Keisha wanted to know how you plan on earning parents' trust through this process. I guess those who remain skeptical about NES specifically.
I think I heard the question. So the first question was about how do we know NES will work? Was that the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I've been at this a long time. I understand what the high leverage points are and how the system has to change. And so the first way is through good research on what works well in schools. But the second way is when it comes to whole-scale systemic reform, part of it is based on experience through the Texas schools that Third Future Schools had and the results that we got in those schools. I'm talking about Ector College Prep, Sam Houston Elementary School. These are in Odessa and Midland. The principals went out a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Our principals went out to see the model in action, and they will confirm that it is a strong instructional model, but a strong systemic model, and they expect good results for their schools as a result of implementing well the NES program.
The other part was parents who remain skeptical going into this new school year. How are you going to win them over if that's something you want to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, parents are usually won over not by whatever the superintendent says. They're won over by what's happening in the school with their kid. That's when you win them over. They care about their students, they care about the teacher of their students, and they care about the principal of the school. At the district level, I know we talk about all this stuff, or what I'm doing or what central office is doing. In the end of the day, parents want to see what's actually happening on the ground. So we're going to persuade the parents to answer your question when they are able to see what's happening in the school, and when we deliver strong instruction for their kids, that's when we'll win them over. Having said that, principals will have parent meetings. They'll have their shared decision-making committees. I'm going to have parent volunteer groups. We're going to do SAC and Learn luncheons, lunch and learns, at the schools. I will myself with parents. And so we're going to be talking a lot. But again, in the end, it's what's happening in the classroom that will matter for parents.
Juan, go ahead, and then after Juan, we're going to go back to Dominic.
Yes, Superintendent Miles. Do these scores reinforce the need to implement the changes that you're trying to put in place in the district? And also with the start of the new school year coming up, I don't know if you can sort of use these scores to sort of try and motivate teachers, students, parents to show them, like, this is where we are, but this is how we can improve. I don't know if there's a way to try and use them to motivate them to improve.
Yeah, thanks for asking. No question that the context of our achievement and our achievement gap has necessitated the NES program. And I've talked about bold systemic change. I think most people understand that we're not in a good place. And, incremental STAAR increases, which we didn't have, but even if we did have incremental STAAR increases as a district, are not good enough. We're not changing the gap fast enough. We're not preparing kids fast enough. So yes, NES and NES aligned programs are necessary to help this district truly change the fortune of kids. And then as far as using it to motivate, look, when there's a lot of change, people will either gravitate to best hopes or worst fears. These scores, really are more about fear than hope. What we need to do, and what I've tried to do, is show a way forward. If you were learned about the convocation, we talked about finding a way and the things that we can do to move forward. And it was more of a hopeful message. And so my message to the teachers and the principals out there in the community is that we have hope, because we are going to be doing big, bold things, but smart things for our kids. And we're going to raise our level of expectation. We're going to raise our level of urgency. And we know what the challenge is, but we know the way forward. That's the hope. That's the message.
Okay, we have about 9 more minutes, so we're going to go to Dominic and then Megan after Dominic.
Yeah, I was just hoping you could clarify for the teacher evaluation, the component based on student achievement, middle of year, end of year tests. What do those tests look like? Are they very much STAAR aligned for subjects that are tested on the STAAR? Tell me about that student achievement component of the teacher evaluations.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So there's 35% of a teacher's evaluation is tied to achievement. I already told you 10 points of those 35 are the school-wide either accountability data or progress on percentile growth for the school. And the teacher gets those 10 points, or up to 10 points. And then the other 2 are based on middle of year scores that you're just referring to, or end of year scores. Most teachers will have the NWEA MAP assessment as that achievement data. And that's based on growth. So we look at the beginning of the year, where a student is, then the middle of the year, and then end of year. In future years, we will have an end of year data point by which to assess the middle of year data point for the new year. But this year we'll look at beginning of the year, and then we'll assess middle of the year, and then we'll go from the beginning of the year to the end of year.
I wanted to pivot a little bit and ask about the convocation that happened yesterday. We've first seen some criticism from teachers who called it embarrassing, kind of a waste of time. To have some criticisms about particularly the performance that occurred kind of in the middle of the convocation or the beginning. I was curious if you could talk about or respond to some of the concerns from teachers or criticisms about that performance.
Look, it was a great convocation, and anybody who says different, that's an anecdote. That's an outlier. If you were here and I've gotten lots and lots of emails from people and texts, just saying it was a great convocation. In fact, many people came up and wanted to talk about how good it is. My staff has gotten emails or comments about how great the convocation was. And the spirit in the room was all about hope and inspiration. So, let's not report stories by anecdote, like one teacher, a handful of teachers dissing the convocation. They didn't get into the spirit of it. Some people always want to bring down something that's great. And so it's a disservice to the students who were here, the teachers that worked hard, the staff that worked hard to put on a convocation in 5 weeks. And it was great, something that HISD hasn't seen before, at least not at this level. And this was the best convocation I've seen as well in all my years. So it was a great convocation, and that's the story. Let's not do, the anecdotes of the outliers or the naysayers. Let's report from the people who thought it was a really good convocation, because that, in a scatter plot, would be the trend line.
I wanted to actually follow up on that. I know there is at least one school where the administration muted the performance because everyone in the room kind of felt insulted. The teachers union has criticized the musical aspect as well as the disorganization of the training this week as a whole, especially Monday and Tuesday, with the fire marshal stopping by because of overcapacity. So I think all of the reporters on this call have been chatting with more than one or two teachers, and all of us have heard the concerns. The teachers union has also kind of blasted this week. So, I mean, I'm just curious, like, I feel like there's some disconnect where anytime we're hearing from a large number of people who have a criticism, you kind of dismiss it. So I'm curious, like, can you see how anyone would find that musical component and the disorganization a little insulting?
First of all, the musical component, no, it was great that the kids had a good time. The teachers were here. They were inspiring. Look, I've been at this a long time, and I've been at change a long time, okay? And I know that there are going to be naysayers. And I know that no matter what we do or how successful the teachers are or the kids are or the performances are or the professional development, you have people who don't want to change. You have people who want to naysay. You have people who would rather sit on the sidelines and criticize. They're not in the arena. And so that's going to happen. And so, yeah, I'm used to that. And so I can put it in perspective. When there's real criticism or when there's real fault, we'll own it. And that's okay. But, I'm also aware of the teachers who are criticizing because they don't want to be part of this. They don't want to be NESA. So this will happen all year long. And so I put things in perspective. I've been here. I was here. I've seen it. I've seen the professional development that's been taking place. I went into many classrooms. It's been overall positive. Some teachers don't want to go to professional development. They want to stay in their classrooms. Well, we're doing professional development differently. So it's a challenge for some. So I'm not dismissing large groups of criticisms or comments, but there are 11,000 teachers. And so even if 20 of them said, negative things, that doesn't make it the trend. It doesn't make it the average. It doesn't make it what actually happened. So that's why I'm reporting out what I see and what I think is positive. instead of focusing on the handful of people relatively that are naysaying.
Okay, 3 minutes left. Josephine, you have the last question.
No, I think people already asked my question already. But I guess if we can, and just following up, to be specific about the criticisms of yesterday's convocation. I mean, some people said that, teachers and parents said that they felt like the performance was making light of some of their concerns. If you can respond to that.
You really need to look at the performance, and you need to see that teachers were well respected. The songs were about, for example, one of the songs was "For Good" from Wicked. That was a tribute to teachers who've been here and some who've retired, people we've met on the way. That was really a touching moment. The dream, I dreamed a dream of teachers and students who have dreams that this work is challenging. It was all about teachers. The teachers who presented it would argue differently. The teachers who were there, judging by the number of people who came up to me and came up to the staff and came up to the kids, the parents who were watching the practice, for the parents of the kids who were on stage, they were inspired. There were a lot of tears. So no, if those people were in a different sort of headset or mindset, it was all about teachers. It really touched upon lots of things that teachers go through, and it validated that. In fact, the person that got the biggest criticism in many joking parts was the superintendent. One of the opening lines was when the kid, they were trying to convince the kid that maybe things would be different with the new superintendent, and that the main character says, "Nah." So it's a musical, guys. It's a convocation, and we're going to have them every year if I'm here, and it'll be fun. And let's keep it where it should be, okay? With the kids, with the teachers. Let's not try to make it more than it is.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock, so that is going to wrap up the media availability. Superintendent Miles, thank you again for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
And for everyone else, if you did not receive the recap of the convocation, we do have that video. We can send you the recap. Any other questions, you can send over to our press office inbox at pressoffice@houstonisd.org. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
That I think everyone has. I think some of us missed the beginning. Was there, before the Q&A started, was there some presentation?
Yeah, it was a very short presentation of slides. We're going to go ahead and send that over. It only lasted about 30 seconds. So we'll send you the recording once it finishes downloading.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Record.